Yeah, yeah. Ball so hard, you better believe me, it's scary. It's basketball at the bar with Calvin and Barry. So put a tip in the jar, cause these dudes can really fill it up. Whether it's buckets you need or just a beer in a cup. We're here for fresh conversations, got some delicious libations. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. My boys got you covered like you being guarded by paying. From the glove to the claw and everyone else in between. Calvin and Barry got everything that you need. For sure. So sit back, relax, because we're starting the show. It's basketball at the bar. Grab your drinks and let's go. Yeah. Grab a drink and let's go. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. Calvin and Barry. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. Let's get it.
What's up, ballers? Welcome to Basketball at the Bar. Join us live for the best NBA podcast here on YouTube, where the takes are hot and the drinks are cold. There's no dress code, and you can take us wherever you go. So pull up a stool, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe. This is Basketball at the Bar. Grab your drinks, and let's go. Calvin, welcome in, dude. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, Barry.
We got a full schedule ahead for you guys today. We're going to be talking about a ton of NBA news, current news, and past news as well. So just to break down everything we're going to be talking about today, we're going to talk about Deandre Ayton and his contract extension, or his re-signing with the Phoenix Suns, what that means for him, what that means for a potential deal for Kevin Durant. We're going to give an update on the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving situation. We're going to discuss more KD news, this time KD potentially going to the Boston Celtics and what the Celtics offered for KD and a player on their roster that they might have pissed off. Maybe it's not a good look for them. I'm not quite sure. We're going to talk about NBA tampering as they open up an investigation into the New York Knicks signing of Jalen Brunson. We're going to talk about Colin Sexton, what potentially might happen to him. We're going to dive into a couple Donovan Mitchell trades. And then we're talking about skinny Luka, Calvin. Are you ready to jump in?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right. So first off, let's start with Deandre Ayton. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Deandre Ayton is happy with the resolution after signing extension with the Phoenix Suns. He's in a good place now, and they consider him a vital piece. He signed a 4-year, $133 million maximum contract extension. Weird, Calvin. We've been hearing about the entire offseason that Ayton was not going to return to the Phoenix Suns. They were not going to give him a max deal. There was all these other suitors around. We heard about their last game of the playoffs. He refused to go into a game. What does this all mean?
What does it all mean? It means that the Suns still have a chance to win, right? They could have severely hurt their chances by losing one of the cornerstones, for the future of this organization. Certainly Chris Paul and Devin Booker are considered cornerstones as well, but who knows how many years Chris Paul has left. Deandre Ayton is a young, bright star coming off a very, very good season, and you have to think that the Phoenix Suns, who repeatedly said they didn't believe Deandre Ayton was worth a max contract, they really must not have believed that any other team in the league felt that same way, or felt that he was worth that money, right? Of course, Indiana decides to make the offer, the biggest offer sheet ever put forth in NBA history, and the Suns were left but to match. They didn't want to let for nothing, and I really believe that the Suns didn't want to lose Deandre Ayton anyway. They just didn't expect to have to spend this kind of money to keep him.
Yeah, I don't think they anticipated spending this much, but it's just such a strange situation, right? Like, number one overall pick, as soon as he got to Phoenix, they took off, right? You could say it's the addition of him, the addition of Chris Paul, maybe the leadership improvements by guys like Devin Booker and other role players. Not that Devin Booker is a role player, but there are more players on the team than Deandre Ayton and Chris Paul. But then it just kind of seems to crumble apart, and it seems like the blame's getting put on Deandre Ayton. Maybe he's not going to return. You and I were both talking about the owner. Apparently this owner doesn't like to spend money. So that was kind of one of the major reasons why we anticipated him departing this offseason. We speculated in all these different teams, maybe it would be a sign and trade. We heard just in the past couple weeks that maybe Ayton would be sent to Brooklyn for a guy like KD. Now he can't be traded, I believe, until December 15th. So that potentially rules out a KD trade involving Deandre Ayton. Not that the Suns cannot make a deal. They still have a few other pieces. It does make it more difficult. But he's back. He's in Phoenix. And he says, quote unquote, this is a blessing. This contract not only has generational impacts for my family, but also with the way we were able to work in the Phoenix community and home in the Bahamas. So big win for Phoenix, big win for Deandre Ayton. What does this mean for the Phoenix Suns, Calvin? And are they right back in contention next season?
Well, I think that's exactly what it means for them. They are still in contention. Even though they had a bit of a failure in the postseason, this is a team that for the last 2 regular seasons has been one of the best, if not the best, like they were last year in the Western Conference. And they're returning basically every single one of their players. So they're still young. They still have definitely a good window to compete. And I think that this whole situation kind of underlies or underscores the direction that the NBA is headed in general, with a important collective bargaining agreement decision coming up to have to be made for the league by December. That's when they can opt out of the current collective bargaining agreement and have to restructure a new one. Competitive balance and the luxury tax are going to be 2 of the most talked about things for that collective bargaining agreement. And the way that the NBA is working right now, as you can see clearly from the Golden State Warriors, if you want to be good and if you want to win in this league, you're going to have to spend money. You're going to have to amass a roster that's good enough to win, and that requires spending money and spending into the tax. So I think that Phoenix didn't want to do this move, but they ultimately realized that they've got a chance to win, and that is more important right now than being cheap.
Exactly. I also want to throw this out there that Phoenix is saving a little bit of money on this deal. They could have offered a 5-year, $179.6 million contract to Ayton, which they did not. He received a max deal, 4-year max deal from the Pacers for the $133 million, which Phoenix just matched right away. So they did save a little bit of money on this deal. He's only locked up for 4 years, not 5. We'll see what the implications are as far as that goes as the season and the years progress here. Maybe Ayton, not being locked up for that 5th season might impact Phoenix. Maybe it helps them. Maybe it gives them flexibility to bring in another guy once Chris Paul, rides out into the sunset. So we will definitely keep you guys posted on what happens here. But I think it's a win for both sides. And I'm just happy for Phoenix fans. And I'm happy for Deandre Ayton. And they should be back in the postseason next season. No problem. All right, let's talk about KD and Kyrie. Do you have any updates on the KD-Kyrie situation?
Well, personally, I don't. But I just got some updates from a good friend of mine, Barry Ware, who put out a video this morning on Basketball at the Bar updating the Kevin Durant situation that he just met with owner Joe Tsai. So if you're interested in what Barry had to say earlier today, go ahead and check that video out. But Barry, I'll kind of let you go from here since you gave a report earlier on the meeting with the Nets owner.
Yeah, no worries. I will happily take KD and I'll let you handle Kyrie. So as the situation currently goes with Kevin Durant, he is scheduled to meet with the Nets owner Joe Tsai this week to figure it out. He is tired of dealing with management, with he said, she said, workarounds. He wants to go directly to the source, that is to the owner of the Nets, who has expressed frustration in this whole situation as well. So maybe this will be a good meeting for them to kind of hash things out and get on the same page. Or this could be the beginning of the end for KD. It's a very, very important meeting. If him and Joe see eye to eye, I could see him retaining with the Nets for the next 4 seasons. Or maybe they just say, hey, you know what? We don't want you here. You don't want to be here. we have a couple different options. We can either trade you right now, or we can rebuild your value. Not that it really needs to be done, but in eyes of other teams, maybe you wait till the trade deadline, till the team is a little bit more desperate and wants to make a move. And the Nets get a little bit more out of that. So we will know, hopefully in the next couple days or towards the end of the week, what actually happens with Kevin Durant and whether he takes back his trade request or if he doubles down and says, I want out of Brooklyn. Calvin, I'll let you take Kyrie.
Well, I wish I had more updates to give about Kyrie Irving. I don't think there's anybody out there, maybe other than Kyrie himself and people at the top of the Nets organization, maybe Kyrie's family members, that really know the true extent of what the situation is. But nothing really has changed for Kyrie. He opted in, as you mentioned earlier in the show, to that last year of the deal he signed, which is worth, like $36 million, something like that. That really limited the options that Kyrie Irving has, as well as the Nets have, in terms of sending him to another team. Because teams now have to match that salary. They can't use a mid-level exception on him or anything like that. We have known for a while now that Kyrie wishes to go to the Lakers to team up again with LeBron James, try to run it back and win a couple more titles there. But the Nets really haven't shown much interest in getting a deal done with the Lakers that would send Kyrie there. The obvious choice in return would be sending Russell Westbrook, who the Lakers have maybe expressed interest in wanting to move themselves. But until the Nets feel like they need to make a move here, I don't think they're going to. They played without Kyrie Irving for most of last season. I don't think they really want him on the team anyway, so not having him there is probably not going to be too big of a deal, other than the fact that they're having to pay him, right? So there's still probably optimism in Brooklyn that there will be this one big reconciliation with everybody, and they'll all get the band back together and be focused on winning a title. But right now I think the Nets have a lot of leverage in both situations with Durant and with Irving. And I don't expect to see anything happen with the Kyrie Irving front, at least for a few months.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we heard just a few weeks ago that Kyrie was rescinding his trade request, and he said, I want to be on the Nets next season, whether it's with KD or not. I don't know if that's his true feelings or if that's a business move or something he needs to do to kind of like reestablish himself. But this situation could go so many different ways, which is the crazy part, right? Like KD and Kyrie could come back. Ben Simmons could fit in perfectly. This team could be in the NBA Finals next season. Like that is a realistic possibility. On the other end, KD could end up getting traded. Kyrie could end up getting bought out and potentially join Cleveland halfway through the season. Or sorry, not Cleveland, LA halfway through the season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this situation. But I don't see an end in sight, at least in the short term. So definitely more for us to talk about. I know you love talking about Kyrie Irving. We've been talking about this guy for like 2 years solid, over and over and over again. So it finally feels good that maybe we will have a resolve, but I don't see it coming anytime soon. But I think it's safe to say, Calvin, by the end of this year, I don't see Kyrie on the Nets next offseason because he's a free agent. I don't see him re-signing.
I would definitely have to agree with that. And let's keep in mind, it doesn't really matter what Kyrie Irving says, whether or not he rescinds his trade request, says he wants to be with Brooklyn, says he wants to play with Kevin Durant, says he wants to play with anyone. We've heard him say all sorts of things, how he was going to re-sign in Boston. His word is not very good right now in NBA circles, at least for the average listener or the average fan. So it's all a big question mark, and until they all report to training camp and they're all there together and the microphones are in front of their faces, they won't be able to dodge the questions then. So I think we're going to just have to wait at least until late September, early October.
Yeah, great point. All right, next up, we're talking about Kevin Durant again here, but it's okay, Calvin. You can relax. Kyrie is not included in this situation. And this is a little bit of old news. It broke back towards the end of July that the Boston Celtics had made an offer for Kevin Durant. It seems like every team that loses in the NBA Finals wants to add Kevin Durant to their roster. And I guess that would go for every team that missed the playoffs or didn't make the finals as well, right? KD is a good player. We all want him on our team. I think he's much less of a headache than a guy like Kyrie Irving, and I think he's much more skilled. So the Celtics are not dumb for wanting Kevin Durant. However, they offered Jaylen Brown in a package for Kevin Durant, and Jaylen Brown is not happy about it. We saw him post multiple things on social media. This is a guy that's played exceptionally well for them. He was drafted by the Celtics, a pretty quiet guy. We don't really hear much. And just, fast forward to last trade deadline, you and I were talking about, do Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum fit together? Is one of those guys going to get traded? What's going to happen? Then they make it to the NBA Finals. What are your thoughts here? Is it dumb for the Celtics to offer Jaylen Brown? And could this have any long-term lasting effects? If a trade never goes through, Jaylen Brown's feelings seem to be hurt, right?
Well, I think his feelings should be hurt, right? This is not the first time that the Celtics have dangled Jaylen Brown as trade bait. Kevin Durant is certainly this is why this situation is difficult to answer from an outsider's perspective, because if I'm always going to do everything I can to try to get Kevin Durant. He's one of the greatest players ever. And for a team that fell just short of winning a championship, the Golden State Warriors also fell just short of winning a championship, added Kevin Durant, albeit that was in free agency and not through a trade. But it resulted in them winning back-to-back titles, and could have ended up winning more than that if it weren't for injuries. So if you're just asking, does it make sense to go after Kevin Durant? Of course it does. It does for every team. However, the Celtics might have done more damage than they could have helped themselves in this situation. One, because the trade ultimately didn't work, whether how it broke down or who said no, whatever the case may be, we don't really know the answer to that. But we're talking about a team that is more than on the rise here. I mean, the Celtics have been on the rise now ever since they drafted Brown and Tatum a few years ago. So, and this is a team that just made the NBA Finals. They had one of the greatest second halves of any team in NBA history. They're an amazing defensive team. They're young. They seem like they're going to be around for a while. And if you piss off one of the two best players on that team, maybe Jaylen Brown just decides, okay, you guys are trying to trade me. Now I want out. Just send me somewhere else. I don't feel the love here. That could do irreplaceable damage or irreparable damage to a Boston Celtics team that's got a big championship window right now.
Yeah, and this is also a very young team too, right? With a ton of talent and a ton of future potential that you mentioned. You might be mortgaging it all for a 33, 34-year-old Kevin Durant. Yes, he is locked up for 4 more years, and maybe he does help you win a championship. But the way the squad is stated right now, the Boston Celtics could be in the finals for the next 5 seasons, potentially, or at least have a good shot at it. I guess the trade that was offered was Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and a draft pick for Kevin Durant. The Nets declined the deal, and they came back and said, any deal for Kevin Durant, we want Jaylen Brown, we want Marcus Smart, we want draft picks, and potentially another rotation player. What are your thoughts on the original offer and the counter offer? Who says no?
Well, I think it's pretty odd. I mean, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and a first-round pick is a much better deal than a lot of teams have to offer, right? That's just facts. I mean, Jaylen Brown is an ascending player in this league, one of the best two-way players, and has a lot of room to grow. The Nets have been very steadfast, and again, it's a lot about what the market is set at, right? We talk about salaries, in other sports. When one guy signs a big contract extension, all the other players at his position that are going to be eligible for new contracts soon, that's the bar, right? They have to then surpass that. The Rudy Gobert trade earlier this summer for Minnesota set an incredibly high bar expected to be one of the biggest trade packages required ever in NBA history to get a player like Kevin Durant. So the fact that Rudy Gobert commanded 4 first-round picks means that Kevin Durant has to equal at least that, right? So any team that's trying to make a deal with the Brooklyn Nets right now has to give up, arguably too much, no matter who you are. That's just the state of the union right now for where this situation is at. The counteroffer, Brown and Smart plus first-round picks, maybe even another player, that's so much to give up for a team that has a really good shot to win as they're presently constructed. I mean, you can make an argument that any team in the league could use Kevin Durant, but you can also make an argument that there are a few teams, a very, very small number of teams, that don't need Kevin Durant, and I would put Boston as one of those teams. So it's a very difficult situation, or a delicate, I should say, situation.
Does the fact that maybe Deandre Ayton cannot be involved in a trade until halfway through December make maybe the Boston Celtics offer look a little bit better? And keep in mind, we're dealing with Danny Ainge here, who is known as one of the hardest negotiators in the NBA. So although that maybe was his first offer, that's probably not his true offer, right?
Well, it is Brad Stevens now, who did learn from Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge is on to Utah, but
correct.
I think Brad Stevens probably operates in a lot of the same ways. Does the Deandre Ayton signing affect all of this? Probably. I mean, all of these major dominoes, whether it's Donovan Mitchell or Kevin Durant or Deandre Ayton, they're all kind of tied into each other a little bit, just because a lot of the teams that are interested in these guys are going to be interested in those other players as well, right? So it probably has some impact on it, but in my opinion, the Nets don't want to trade Kevin Durant. They really do not want to see him go, as opposed to Kyrie Irving, who I think they wouldn't mind letting him go. So that being said, they're going to use that leverage to maximize or require an impossible package in return that's just going to make teams, fizzle out, and then hopefully they start the season with Durant and they can rebuild, some sort of relationship that way. I really that's ultimately what's holding back a deal here.
Yeah, good point. I totally forgot that Danny Ainge had moved on, but you're right. Brad Stevens is the guy. He's in charge now. He probably learned a ton from Danny Ainge while he was there. So, and Danny Ainge is well-known Boston Celtic for a really long time. So I'm sure if somebody called him from the Celtics organization with some questions, he might be willing to
tampering.
Well, that is a great transition, Calvin, into our next subject here. As the NBA opens up a tampering investigation into the Knicks signing of Jalen Brunson. We heard about them last month opening up an investigation into the Philadelphia 76ers in bringing in the band back from Houston, basically. He brought in James Harden, PJ Tucker, all guys that we weren't sure how much it was going to cost to get them. It was pretty much a done deal that they were ending up with the Sixers. Now the
Daniel
NBA
House
is focused.
as well, who was also on the Rockets team.
Correct. Now the NBA is focused on Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks. I felt like the entire offseason we knew Jalen Brunson was heading to New York, right? Like, the writing was on the wall. As soon as free agency started, like not even a minute into it, it was already reported that he had signed a 4-year, $104 million deal. If teams are not allowed to contact players before the official start of free agency, Jalen Brunson must talk really, really fast, and he must have a great internet connection to get this stuff signed as soon as the buzzer rings, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure the internet connection is good no matter what. I mean, this is just this situation has tampering written all over it, right? Like, it's impossible not to think that something happened here. First of all, the Mavericks reportedly offered on the first day of free agency a larger contract than the Knicks offered, but they were never able to officially get that offer to Jalen Brunson for whatever reason. It's kind of like, who was it that was they held up in their house and wouldn't let them? Oh, DeAndre Jordan from the Clippers.
Yeah.
How Blake Griffin and Chris Paul basically kidnapped him, locked him in his house, wouldn't let him go talk to Mark Cuban and the Mavericks, and he eventually signed that deal with the Clippers. This kind of has the same feel to it. I mean, Jalen Brunson's dad gets hired as an assistant coach in New York just a couple of weeks or months before free agency starts. He's linked to the Knicks basically from the time the playoffs begin or end, and then all of a sudden you hear that he's signing this big deal with them. So, you know, tampering, I think, has to happen all the time. Like, you can probably pick half the league every year with whatever free agent they bring in, or maybe it's a deal for a trade, a draft pick or something like that. There's some sort of tampering going on. Even on Draymond Green's podcast, he recently had DeMar DeRozan on, and they were talking about how he was telling DeMar in the offseason, hey, man, you got to come sign with Golden State. We're going to win a title. You could win here, all this stuff. That stuff happens. It has to happen all the time. So
players are allowed to do that, right?
Well, I mean, where do you draw the line, though? Like, that's the thing here. I mean, I just think that it's a very difficult thing to enforce, a difficult thing to police around the league, because these guys are all friends. They have relationships. They have each other's numbers, and so you know, it's a very tricky subject here. But yes, I think that this situation there's got to be, by the letter of the law, tampering written all over it.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys have played together for almost their entire lives, right? In one shape or form. I want to give a shout out to Ethan and Flame Flurry 11. I see you guys in the chat. Thank you guys for joining. Feel free to let us know what your thoughts are, how you feel about any of the stuff we're talking about. Calvin, my question for you, do you see the Knicks losing any draft picks in this deal, or is it more just like a fine slap on the wrist and let it go?
Well, recent history shows us that, you know, draft picks are probably going to be part of the penalty here. I mean, I think it was Chicago and Miami, if I'm not mistaken, just
Correct.
in this past draft a month ago, lost second-round picks because of tampering allegations or investigations. So I think that, yeah, you probably will see something like that. But the problem, I think, or on the larger scale here, to get people to stop tampering, is you have to make the penalty more severe. A team is going to risk losing a second-round pick every single time if it means signing, you know, one of the top 50 to 100 players in the league. Every single time they're going to make that choice.
Oh, yeah. I'll sacrifice a second-round pick for Jalen Brunson, no problem.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't agree more. So, you know, what do they need to do? Is it a fine? Is it a first-round pick? What are your thoughts here?
I think it's got to be a first-round pick. I mean, you can make a big fine, but look at Golden State. They're already paying a crap ton of money for their players. They're willing to spend in the luxury tax. Certain teams are not going to be as affected by that as others. So you have to hit them where it hurts. There's only 2 rounds in the NBA draft. Losing a first-round pick for tampering would be a pretty significant penalty.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of penalties, the Cleveland Cavaliers are walking a very, very tight rope with Colin Sexton. Interesting article here. Apparently, Colin Sexton is looking for $20 million per season. He is still a restricted free agent, has not signed with a team. Interesting numbers here. In his last season, he averaged 24.3 points per game, 4.4 assists per game, shot 48% from the field, 37% from three-point range, and 82% from the free throw line. This is a guy that's only 23 years old. How the hell is he not signed, Calvin?
This has got to be one of the biggest mysteries in the NBA right now. I don't get it at all. First of all, I don't get why Cleveland doesn't want him. They seem to now, for more than one season, have been trying to move on from him. And maybe they just didn't like the fit in the backcourt with Darius Garland. That could be the case. But the last time we saw Colin Sexton on the floor, albeit it wasn't a large sample size, but he was playing extremely well and putting up numbers that probably, if he did it over the course of a whole season, could have included him in the MVP race. So, or, you know, at bare minimum, most improved player, something like that. So he's an incredibly talented player, and the fact that no team out there is willing to commit an offer to him, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It's very, very strange. In this article, it says there are multiple people inside the organization that if they have their choice between Caris LeVert and Colin Sexton, they'll take Caris over Colin simply because of his size. You and I, we made a video about the Cavaliers just a few weeks ago, and we were enamored by the team, right? We're like, I absolutely love this team. It's young. It has a ton of depth. They have size. They're versatile. Maybe they're too deep. Maybe they have, too much that they're like, maybe we don't need a guy like Colin Sexton. Like I figured that if I was a GM in that position, I would at least try and extract some value. Maybe it's a sign and trade to another team, something like that. But if this article is true and he wants $20 million per season, I don't know if that's doable. But at the same time, he is young, but you look at these numbers, 24, 4 on 50% shooting and almost 40% shooting from 3 for a 23-year-old. We've seen guys like this get paid all the time. Look at Jalen Brunson. He's a small guy. Jalen Brunson's a small guy.
Yeah.
He didn't even start most of the season. Signed with the Knicks.
Yeah.
So
I do
have to ask you, Calvin, what do you think ends up happening with Colin Sexton?
Really hard to tell, but just the fact that there's absolutely no or appears to be absolutely no interest in him from the rest of the league right now, I would think that he ends up starting the season in Cleveland and is probably going to be, one of the big talked about trade pieces at the trade deadline. That's my guess as to what happens with him. Unless he comes out and performs extremely well and the team starts really winning, then, Cleveland has a different problem, a better problem on their hands, but they'll have a different set of questions to answer in terms of what do they do with him long term? Do they keep him, and how much do they pay him?
Yeah, it's a really tricky situation. Maybe he returns to Cleveland with the qualifying offer or something for 1 year. Maybe he ends up getting shipped out. For me, if I'm a team like maybe Utah or somebody and I'm looking to build around a young point guard, maybe I make a move for a guy like Colin Sexton. I know the Cavaliers have been interested in a guy like Donovan Mitchell, so maybe he's included in a trade for a guy like that. But this dude is only 23 years old. He's got a bright future ahead of him, and he's an absolute baller. So I do expect him to recover for this, but it's a rough summer if your name is Colin Sexton. It just is. So moving on here.
Absolutely.
Perfect transition I got for you. We'll talk about Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz here. As you know, they traded Rudy Gobert for a huge package. Huge. Like, I was so surprised that they got that much for Rudy Gobert because I like Gobert, but I think he's pretty much a two-dimensional player. Now, Donovan Mitchell is a better player than Rudy Gobert, in my opinion, but he's small too, so maybe he is comparable to a guy like a Colin Sexton. But this article I found has 3 new Donovan Mitchell trades the Utah Jazz must consider. Before I jump into these trades, Calvin, I just want to hear from you. Should Utah trade Donovan Mitchell, or do they hold on to him?
I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer. I think it all depends on how, what the relationship is between him and the organization right now. The fact that they let Rudy Gobert go, that seemed to be a lot of the problem, right? Or at least that's what, maybe the media was painting it out to be, that he didn't want to play with Rudy Gobert, all this stuff, even though they repeatedly both said that they buried the hatchet and they're both, concerned with winning and all that stuff. But letting him move on or getting rid of him seems to open the door for the fact that they could build around Donovan Mitchell, right? It's his team and his team only, and maybe they kind of hand the unofficial keys to the franchise over to him. But then at the same time, you've also got to look at it from the perspective of, well, we failed, from a team standpoint, team success standpoint the past couple of seasons when we thought we had a team that was good enough to win. They were the first seed in the Western Conference a couple years ago, fell flat on their face in the playoffs, and then struggled to beat a Dallas team, ultimately did not beat a Dallas team that didn't have Luka for the first 2 games. So big failures, out of Utah in the past 2 postseasons. So the question is, do they just scrap everything, try to amass as many assets and draft picks and all that stuff as possible and start a quick rebuild, if you will, in Utah? That's a tough question to answer. But a player like Donovan Mitchell, given what you've already gotten in return for Rudy Gobert, should be able to set you up pretty well for the future. The question is, are you willing to blow it up, hit the reset button?
All right, well, let's assume they are hitting the reset button. I got 3 different trades here. You're going to love this first one because it involves one of your favorite teams, and that's the Chicago Bulls. This is the Utah Jazz receive Lonzo Ball, Patrick Williams, a 2023 first-round pick. It's from Portland, a 2025 first-round pick from Chicago, and a 2026 pick swap for Donovan Mitchell. What do you think about this deal? Who says no?
I'll be honest, I don't like the deal for Chicago. I'm giving up a ton there. Obviously, any deal that involves Donovan Mitchell is going to have a big return package, right? It's going to be a lot of draft picks. It's going to be good players, all that stuff. Lonzo Ball is incredibly important to what the Bulls do. While Donovan Mitchell might be a better overall offensive player, he is not a better defensive player. He's not a better passer, and the Bulls really need that. You could see how badly they missed Lonzo down the stretch last season. So while it seemed great, a guy like Donovan Mitchell, him with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, that's a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of shots that need to go up. Lonzo, I think, is a much better fit on that Bulls team right now, so I don't like that trade from Chicago's perspective.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that draft picks do not win basketball games. So, yes, you are giving up a couple first-round picks there, but you hit it right on the head, and the main loss for them would be Lonzo Ball. And I'm still a little confused. Like we talked about just a few days ago, Patrick Williams, what he's going to be. He could be so many different things for the Chicago Bulls. Will he be that guy? We're not really sure yet. All right, trade number 2. This is the Philadelphia 76ers. So the Jazz received Tobias Harris. I swear we've been talking about trades involving Tobias Harris forever now. Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, and a 2029 first-round pick. This is 7 years from now for Donovan Mitchell. Who says no?
I think Utah says no. Ultimately, I do, not that the type of players they're getting back wouldn't be good enough necessarily. Tobias Harris probably isn't the same level of player as Donovan Mitchell, but he's a very well-rounded player in this league. I just think that, again, going back to where the bar is set right now for trades involving all-star players, that's not enough currently on the current market to get that deal done.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And we have one more potential trade deal here, and I know many of our subscribers are fans of this team, so they might love this deal. They might hate it, but the Sacramento Kings jump in the mix here. The Utah Jazz receive Harrison Barnes, Rashawn Holmes, Keegan Murray, a 2023 first-round pick. This is a swap, a 2026 first-round pick, a 2027 first-round pick swap, a 2028 first-round pick, and a 2029 first-round pick swap. So that's 2 first-round picks, 3 pick swaps, this year's first-round pick in Keegan Murray, Rashawn Holmes, and Harrison Barnes for Donovan Mitchell. This is an absolute haul for the Utah Jazz, but this could potentially be a good move for the Sacramento Kings, as they have not been able to bring in an all-star caliber player other than Domantas Sabonis over the past 10-plus seasons. They are in win-down mode. They've missed the playoffs for 16 years consecutively. Could a De'Aaron Fox, Donovan Mitchell, and Sabonis tandem make it to the playoffs? I'd have to think so. But Calvin, what are your thoughts on this deal, and who says no here?
Man, I say no to that deal if I'm Sacramento. This is a tough one, right? Because obviously the Kings are so desperate to make it back to the postseason, and getting a player of Donovan Mitchell's caliber is something that has been completely out of the question for Sacramento unless they get lucky enough to draft someone like that for a very, very long time. So of course you're going to be enticed to do this, but the problem I think with doing this deal is you completely eviscerate your front line if you're Sacramento. You have no wings left on this team. You're going to be really, really dependent on one of these, second or third string guys, unproven guys. You're losing height. They have a bunch of centers, but they don't really have a lot of power forwards or wings altogether on this team. You're basically going to be running it out there with Trey Lyles and somebody that's going to step in at small forward. Plus, you just signed Malik Monk and traded for Kevin Huerter this offseason. Those are both shooting guards on a team that's already top-heavy with guards. So, again, it's Donovan Mitchell is like the bright, shiny new toy, but I don't think that this would help the overall team construct in Sacramento. Not to mention the fact they're giving up all the draft picks on top of it.
Yeah. I'm very, very mixed on this deal because, bringing a guy like Donovan Mitchell to Sacramento is an absolute dream, right? Like, he is the guy that we've been missing for a really long time. A guy that can get his own shot, can take the last shot, a game-winning shot, and he's just got that swagger. He could bring so much to this Kings team. And as I mentioned in the last one, draft picks don't help you win games. Yes, this is a ton of draft picks, but if this Kings team is good, draft picks don't matter as much. However, if this blows up in Sacramento's face, they don't have any draft picks to rebuild around, right? Luckily, there's that rule where you can't trade consecutive years, so there would be pick swaps. So, if Utah's not a good team and Sacramento's not a good team, a pick swap is almost a wash. But I'm very, very mixed on this deal. I know Harrison Barnes is entering in the last year of his deal. I anticipated Richaun Holmes not being on the team next year. Keegan Murray was basically, a win for Kings on lottery night. So if I was just to rewind back and say, all right, we give up Harrison Barnes, Richaun Holmes, and a bunch of picks for Donovan Mitchell, I'd probably be more open to it. But after watching Keegan Murray in Summer League, I think that he's got a bright future ahead. So this is a deal that if I'm the GM of the Sacramento Kings, I'm not saying no to, but I'm not saying yes. And I need more time to think about it because this deal could go one of two ways. It could be exceptional for Sacramento. They could be, a top 4 team in the West next season with a big 3 to actually build around. Or it could blow up in their face and they have no draft picks and they have to gut the roster. And we're looking at 20 plus years of not making the playoffs. I think that option 1 is more likely, which makes me lean a little bit more towards maybe saying yes to a deal like this. But it's a very, very hard deal to say yes to. And I do also have to throw it out there. When Monty was back in Houston, he wasn't the head GM. He was assistant GM. But they traded for a guy in James Harden. They traded a bunch of draft picks and some young players. It worked exceptionally well. And I think that's been kind of Monty's mission in Sacramento, right? Is get all these draft picks, get all these young players, and then trade for a star. So maybe this fits his package for that, or maybe he's happy with the team, how it already is. It's a very, very interesting deal. If I were just to ask you, Calvin, if you're Utah, out of all 3 of these deals, you like Sacramento's offer the best?
I like Sacramento's offer the best. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're getting the most draft picks in your return. You're getting a couple of very exciting young player, some veteran guys who have been, pretty proven commodities in this league for a long time. So, yeah, I think that's probably the best total package. There's one deal that we didn't talk about that I know you and I have both looked at, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, but the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think, have a great trade package that they could offer for Donovan Mitchell. with guys like Colin Sexton or whether it was Karis LeVert or whatever. They've got, a bunch of wings they could offer, Isaac Okoro, all these players. And then they could offer draft picks as well. So I think Cleveland has a really good draft package in there. But out of those three you just said, from Utah's perspective, I think Sacramento's package probably has to be the most well-liked.
Yeah, I agree. And I see a bunch of people here in the chat, a bunch of Kings fans saying no, saying hell no, I don't want to do this deal. I don't like this deal at all. Well, hey, guys, we'd love to hear from you. So if you guys want to call us and join us here on the show live and have your voice heard, we'd love to have you. So if you're free right now, if you got your phone nearby, type in that number, 916-562-1130. Call into the show. We'll have you on live right now, and you can tell me why you wouldn't do the deal. All right, so
this deal would make a whole lot more sense for Sacramento if they, instead of trading for a shooting guard in the offseason and signing one, they went in for a power forward like John Collins, right? If that deal gets done, and now you're looking at, okay, let's trade draft picks and whoever our first-round pick was this year, Rashawn Holmes, something like that, for Donovan Mitchell, I think that would make a whole lot more sense.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And the interesting thing is we haven't really heard the Nets involved in this deal. And is it maybe because KD doesn't want to go to Utah? Utah's not interested in KD. Maybe they realize it's hard to work out these 3-team deals. But it seems like when you have multiple superstars or stars wanting out on teams, maybe the easiest way is to swap them. I don't know. Can you type it in the chat? Yes.
Only time
I will drop the number here for you in the chat. It is, hold on one second, 916-562. You got to remember this number, Calvin. Get it tattooed or something.
I know. Oh, it's tattooed on my brain. I got it out here, 1130. 562-1130.
But yeah, you guys are welcome to call in anytime during the show, on this show or Royal Rebounds. It's the same number. Call in. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to hear your opinion. All right, while we're waiting on that, Calvin, let's talk about Skinny Luka. He's taken the internet by storm. Last thing we heard about Luka Doncic before he was eliminated from the playoffs was he was drinking before games in San Francisco. I think many Kings fans were probably happy about that. Not happy about his performance this year because he played exceptionally well.
I was going to say, it didn't really make much of a difference.
But we've been talking about Luka Doncic coming in fat. Apparently this was him last season. And now look at him, Calvin. Skinny Luka. What are your thoughts here?
I don't really have many thoughts on this. This is just, we hear this every year, about different players. This is the time of year when everybody, you see it all over social media, whether it's some guy working out in the gym, Kawhi looks really jacked this year, or LeBron is looking great, or whatever the case may be. Now is the time, right, when there isn't anything happening, there's no summer league games playing, there's this dead period where all these pro-rams are going on, and guys are just working on their games before and working out in the gym before the season starts. So it's just another one of those stories. Luka's going to show up to camp. Maybe he looks this way. Maybe he puts on a few pounds. Zion Williamson, to me, is the only guy in the league that you really, really need to be concerned about what his body mass index is before the season starts. It's written into his contract, for Christ's sake.
Who is that? Zion, you said?
Yeah.
Not James Harden, huh? Interesting. I mean, I'm looking at this photo of Luka. I mean, he's skinny, but where's the muscle, man? Like, is the goal to just look like KD or get super skinny? Like, I thought the point of offseason is to, like, work out, put on muscle, not just lose weight. Like, I don't know.
Well, he could be going for more endurance here. I mean, Luka's a big guy. Let's not forget. 6'8", well over 200 pounds. So the style of play that he plays with doesn't necessarily dictate that he has to be, super slim or anything like that. But I think one of the things that you're going to have to watch with Luka at a very young age, his usage rate is off the charts, right? So he hasn't had any major injuries, luckily. Again, his style of play is kind of conducive to that. He doesn't put himself in harm's way. He's not flying at the rim all the time or jumping super high like John Morant or some of these smaller guards. He plays with a little bit more safe style, but the fact that he's asked to do so much for an entire season and then even more in the as they've shown with the way that they've built that roster, there's not another real true superstar on that team. It's Luka and a bunch of guys that fit around him. So I think that they are probably concerned, being Dallas or Luka's trainers, something like that, with building up his stamina level, making sure that he...
I think we're losing you there, Calvin. I'm going to put it back to me here. But yeah, interesting situation here. I mean, you look at these photos for me, Luka Doncic on the left looks much more muscular. On the right, he looks really skinny. So we'll see what happens here. I think somebody in the chat said that it's the opposite of a James Harden situation, which I think is pretty funny. But definitely something to keep your eyes on. Luka seems motivated. You know, maybe last year was a game changer for him. Maybe he got to the playoffs and he wasn't where his body should have been, or maybe he's like, hey, when I got in last year in training camp, I was out of shape and it took me 2 months to get in shape. If I show up this year in shape, I'm not going to have to face the Golden State Warriors until the Western Conference Finals or something like that, you know? I don't know. What do you think?
Maybe he decided to cut beer out of his diet altogether, and that's why he's losing weight.
Ooh, that is also another interesting point there, too. We've also seen many of these players going vegan, too, which we know can help cut pounds. So, interesting situation. We'll definitely see. I think we can open it up now to Q&A. So, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them here in the chat. Calvin and I, we got answers. And like I said, if you guys want to call into the show, feel free to call in. We'll be here for another few minutes hanging out. And, yeah. Any other news, Colin, that you want to talk about? Any other things that are happening right now in the NBA? I sent you a link to the Sacramento Kings. They're running a contest as far as who they believe or who you think will be the opening night opponent. You will win free tickets if you guess correctly, or you'll be entered in a pool. They are expected to release the results on August 19th, so that means the schedule is coming out before that, right?
You would have to think, yeah.
I wrote down the Clippers. You have any guesses? I had Asha put the Phoenix Suns down. Did you put Portland, or what are you thinking?
I put Utah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Interesting.
Don't ask me why. I was scrolling through teams. I think they played Portland the first game last year. So I know you told me to put Portland in there, but I decided it's probably not going to happen 2 years in a row. So I just went with Utah. Yeah,
we just need 13 other people to enter in with us, and then we'll have all the teams covered. Yeah. So we'll be set there. I don't know. I have a really interesting feeling about the Clippers. And, you know, I was looking back. I just, as soon as I saw the question, I was like, oh, we're playing the Clippers game one. I don't know why. It just feels like we're playing the Clippers. I went back and looked at the past few years. We haven't played the Clippers game one, I think, for like 4 seasons now. So maybe it's about time again. But we do see a lot of those Phoenix, Portland, Utah, LA games early on in the season. So, hey, maybe we'll luck out and maybe we'll get some free tickets and we'll be able to make it to the game. We got an interesting question or comment here by Brian Thompson. He says, Calvin's hair for LeBron James. I'm not sure if this is a trade to bring maybe LeBron James onto the Royal Rebound set or Basketball at the Bar set, or if they want to put your hair on LeBron James. I'm not really sure.
I'm not sure either. I definitely think LeBron would appreciate having my hairline as opposed to his, but I'm not sure I'm willing to part ways with it just yet. I know, Barry, you cut your hair recently. I'm still liking mine. I'm going to keep it for a little bit longer. So,
Would you trade the hairline for LeBron's career?
As in, I could have LeBron's career?
That's a dumb question. Of course you would, right? You'd go bald at 13
Absolutely.
to be LeBron James, right?
I would. Yeah, you could take every hair off my head if I could be LeBron James or have LeBron James' career. Absolutely.
I mean, I would do it just for LeBron James money or like a part of being LeBron James. I don't even need the full package, right? I don't even need the full package. But thank you, Brian. Appreciate your comment. That's great. Flame Flurry 11, who's also the winner of the Marvin Bagley autographed basketball, who unfortunately is not on the Kings anymore. I want to know from you, where's the ball, man? Is it on your desk? Is it in your room? What are you doing with it? Are you playing with it at the basketball court? Like, I want to know what you're doing with the ball. But he says here, Kings receive Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle. Philadelphia receives Harrison Barnes, Rashawn Holmes, and a second-round pick. Do you accept that deal? Or who says no for you, Cal?
I would say yes if I was Sacramento, probably. I don't see Philadelphia doing this deal, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't see them doing the deal. I mean, Rashawn Holmes is going to be, your backup to Joel Embiid, which means he's not going to get a ton of playing time. Maybe you could put him on the court with him. Embiid does shoot the three ball well. But why would you give up Matisse Thybulle for Rashawn Holmes and basically a second-round pick? Because we talked about it before, right? Harrison Barnes and Tobias Harris are almost a wash. But interesting thoughts there. Who is the winner in this deal? Like, for you, Flame, like, do you want Tobias Harris? Is that the goal? Is Matisse Thybulle the goal? And if this trade happens, is this a precursor to something else? Because maybe you do need to fill in some other positions. I want to hear from you. You give up Thybulle because of the big contract Harris has. So I guess this is basically cleaning out of roster spots or salary cap space because Rashawn Holmes is on a reasonably priced deal and Harrison Barnes is expiring at the end of next season. Interesting thoughts. I think Harrison Thybulle would be great for Sacramento, but yeah, the tough thing is if you're Philadelphia, you basically already have your squad, right? So you're competing for a championship. Why cut salary to bring in what? Right? You're not going to cut salary and sign a main guy next offseason.
Right. The one thing I will say that I think Philadelphia would probably be a little bit enticed by with this deal is having a backup center. Remember, they lost Andre Drummond, who is now with the Chicago Bulls. So having a reliable backup for Joel Embiid, who, although he had a great year last year and has kind of put the injury bug to rest for the time being, he does have a lot of injury issues in the past. You want to have a guy that you can rely on to step in if needed at the backup center position. So I think that does make a lot of sense from Philadelphia's standpoint, but I don't think the overall deal is good enough to make Philly ultimately accept.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I just want to show one more video here before we head out because I think you all would love it. Calvin, can you hear me?
We have a deep, almost spiritual.
Yes.
So Mark
yes,
Spears,
I can.
who do you have taking the hardware next season?
I got Keegan Murray because he's going to be on a playoff team. The Kings are going
playoff
to
team.
Playoffs? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
The playoffs where?
Hey man, record that. Record that. It's going to be on a playoff team.
Thank you, gentlemen, for spending some time with us here on NBA Today. All I can say is l'chaim, and we will see you tomorrow.
We're going to have a conversation.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have a conversation.
I just happened to be back today.
It just happened to be back today. The hot taker himself, Mr. Spears. Big Perk is back. I know he's ready to go, and Dave McMenamin. So let's set the scene for this one. This is a team in the Kings that traded Tyrese Halliburton for Domantas Sabonis. They've still got the young star in the making in De'Aaron Fox, and they added the Summer League MVP, Keegan Murray.
You hear that, Cal? Star in the making.
So, Mark,
Yes.
I'm going to
Star in the
start with
making.
you since you brought it up.
I tried to tell
begin
y'all.
with.
I tried to tell you guys.
Can the
We're going to give
Kings
you another chance.
really make the playoffs this season?
Malika, who predicted that the Warriors going to go to the final?
I know, and I apologize, and I'm apologizing to you again for that. You
Okay.
were
I
right.
like
Let's
that.
start with that. Former All-Star Sabonis and Fox are great together. Check out their pick and roll. They're going to be special together. Fox will be an All-Star player now that they're going to have a training camp together. Davian Mitchell is going to take it up another
I like
level
him.
the next season. Keegan Murray was a Summer League MVP. Yes, it's Summer League. He averaged 23 points. Only player in Summer League to shoot over 50% from the field and 40 from three. NBA champ vet Harrison Barnes is back on the team. Two solid veterans, right? Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, new. Rashawn Holmes, underrated. They had 2 voluntary camps. At least 8 players showed up. Veteran coach and staff. I'm putting y'all on game.
Okay, and the play
Not a bad roster, Cal.
In the playoffs, just to be very, very
They
clear
will be
here.
the 8th seed in
Not
the
a
playoffs.
bad
They're
roster at all. But they got Rashawn starting at the 5. Interesting.
One, I want to ask why, but he explained to me why he feel that way. And look, they have a nice young core. I can't knock that. They added some pieces. I feel like Sabonis is a hell of a player. But when I take a look around the Western Conference, okay, and I look at a team like the Los Angeles Clippers, and I say, are the Sacramento Kings better than them? No. And then I look at a team like
Spears
the
put on
Phoenix
his glasses
Suns,
for this.
and I said, no, they're not better than them. I look at the Grizzlies, and I said, no, they're not better than the Grizzlies either.
Take
I
the
look at
Jazz
the
out.
Dallas Mavericks. They're not better than the Mavericks. They're not better than the Nuggets. They're not better than the Timberwolves. They're not better than the Pelicans. And to be honest with you, they're not better than the Trailblazers. So are they going to be probably floating around that area of being in the play-in tournament?
That's
Yes,
a tough one.
Probably
That's
so.
a tough one.
But making the playoffs in the Western Conference Finals, I mean, in the Western Conference,
Jazz are out of there
can't
for
see
sure.
that. I can't see that no way, no how.
So that's the question, right? Because my rule is if you're going to put somebody in, you have to take somebody out. So the Utah Jazz out. But, Dave, I'm seeing the Clippers as being in, who were out last year. Potentially the Lakers, potentially the Trailblazers. What do you think of Mark's prediction here?
So I've been online searching for the job boards at Golden One Center if there was a hype man position open. Clearly, Mark's
That's us, dude. We already filled that job.
I think the team you have to look at will
Oh, yeah.
definitely be in the playoffs next year out of that group is the Clippers. And the team most likely out
We'll see.
are the Jazz.
If what?
No, even without, if Kawhi doesn't play a game next year, the Clippers should be a playoff team.
If Paul George is healthy.
I mean, they had Paul for
He doesn't
the
get
final
COVID
stretch,
in the
and
play-in
they got those
game.
young guys better, and you add in John Wall, and I like what the Clippers have been doing. That's the team I think is definitely there, and then I think it's the Kings, the Trailblazers, and the Lakers fighting for that final spot.
But we
Wait.
said play
Repeat
in.
that. Repeat what you just said.
The Kings, the Trailblazers, and the Lakers competing for that final spot.
Yeah, they're
I didn't say they're definitely in the playoffs.
But take a look at this, Kendrick. No active NBA player. That doesn't mean they weren't.
I'm going to end it on that right there because that is a very, very interesting statistic right there. No active NBA player has ever faced the Kings in the playoffs. We're undefeated, Calvin. Undefeated. But
we're also winless.
What are your thoughts on that video?
My thoughts are no different than they were before I watched that video. I mean, you can't not be excited about what Sacramento has done if you're a Kings fan in the offseason. They've upgraded the roster for sure. And Keegan Murray has, albeit very early, but he's put to bed at least some initial concerns about whether or not he was the right person to draft at 4. So you have to be excited and anticipate them to be better than what they were last year. But I've been saying it since well before the season ended, agreeing with what a lot of these guys on this show are saying in that there's a lot of teams in the Western Conference that you would expect to be better than they were last year. So while the Kings will probably be better as well, it's going to be very tough, stiff competition to crack those final 8 spots.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just like they said in the video, right, if somebody's in, somebody's out. So let's just take a quick look here at the standings, and then we'll wrap up the video. So Western Conference, I think it's safe to say Phoenix, Memphis, Dallas, Golden State, Denver, 5 teams that are definitely going to be there, right? So that brings Utah out. I think Minnesota's in. I think New Orleans is in. And I think the Clippers is in. So that's basically 8 teams, right, that are making the playoffs, or at least slotted in there. And then you have 2 open play-in spots. And that's either San Antonio, which I don't think they're going to be there. Utah, I don't think they're going to be there. Sacramento, the Lakers, which potentially could be there. And, yeah, maybe the Portland Trail Blazers. I mean, 2 of those teams are going to be in the play-in, right? So whether it's Sacramento and LA, those are probably the 2 that stand out most to me. But then again, the Kings still have to win 2 games to make it to the playoffs from that point. So it's definitely possible, but I could also see a situation where the Kings absolutely surprise teams, and they have a much better record than anticipated, just like Memphis last year, right? If I were to ask you at the start of last season, were you going to tell me the Memphis Grizzlies had 56 wins last year? No. You were going to say they are going to be an exceptionally good team.
I would have told you they were a playoff
John
team.
Morant, and John Morant's a good player, but you're not going to tell me they had almost 60 wins. So I think there is some room there to kind of move things around, but I think I got to agree with him. I think the Kings are going to make the playoffs, not the play-in. I think they will find a way to make it into the playoffs next season. And the first thing he said is what hit hardest for me, and that's the pick and roll game of De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. I think that needs to carry the Kings, and I think it can.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it can. We talked about it yesterday when we were on Royal Rebounds. The way that this team is built right now finally feels like you can actually see the blueprint. You can see what they're trying to do. You can see the style of play that they are hoping to achieve with the players that they've brought in on this team. They have a clear set direction for the first time in probably 3, 4, 5 years, I would say. So that's all great. But again, they have to put it together on the court, and it's going to require a little bit of luck. I mean, it requires luck for all teams. You know, they have to stay healthy. They've got to win some important games. They have to gel as a team with a lot of new players, a lot of new pieces that are going to play big roles. But I agree with you, the pick and roll with Fox and Sabonis, surrounding them with shooters on the outside, is going to be very difficult for opposing teams to stop. And that is also the reason, going back to somebody's question in here, Flame, he asked what your starting 5 will be for the Kings. That's the reason why I'm not starting Richaun Holmes next to Sabonis, because what is Richaun best out there for? Pick and roll, right? You want Fox and Sabonis to run the 2-man pick and roll 9 times out of 10. So it doesn't make sense to me to put Richaun out there, who's another pick and roll guy who can't shoot. I think you bring him off the bench with another guard that really likes to play pick and roll and excels in the pick and roll, and that's Davion Mitchell.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What's up, Jeff? Good to see you here in the chat. Flame says, I honestly feel like we are better than Denver. I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself there. Maybe Denver, unhealthy Denver.
Let's slow the roll a little bit here.
Everyone forgets about how good Denver
people
was
forgot about
just
Jamal
a year
Murray.
Before. Yeah. Jamal Murray,
Yes.
Michael Porter Jr., if he's healthy,
And
that team has a ton of
the
potential.
MVP. I mean,
yes.
that's a great team. That's a really, really good team.
Would you say that Jokic is better than Sabonis and Fox combined?
I don't really know how you compare that. Like,
I'm just saying as far as like impact on a team, right? Like, he carried that team to the playoffs, right? By himself?
Basically, yes. I mean, he had one of the best statistical seasons of any player in NBA history last year. So his impact on Denver cannot be overstated. I mean, he's incredible.
Yep. Well, I still think the Kings are making the playoffs, but it's going to be a really fun season. Also want to remind everybody that plays NBA 2K or that is a gamer, if you pre-order 2K right now, you get a year's worth of NBA League Pass. So you can watch all the basketball games, not just the Kings. Flame, you can watch Denver if you want to, familiarize yourself with them. Calvin's going to be watching the Bulls. We're going to be watching all sorts of different basketball. So make sure you guys pre-order NBA 2K. It comes out in about a month, and it's $150, but you get a full year of NBA League Pass, which I've paid, I think, $250 for in the past. So it is an absolute steal. But I think it's time to wrap up the show. We want to thank you all for joining us. Please make sure you guys hit that like button. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button. We greatly appreciate you all. And hey, we're going to be back tomorrow, both on this channel and Royal Rebounds. We've got our new setup. I'm still kind of just finalizing a few things here, but we are going to be putting out daily content on this channel and Royal Rebounds. So make sure you guys stay tuned. And I don't have an exact time for you yet, Flame, but what you can do is you can hit that notification bell and you'll get notified every time I schedule a new video. Some videos will be live, some will be pre-recorded and posted. If you have not seen my Kevin Durant video, check that out. I posted that just a couple hours ago. But Calvin, any last words before we head out?
Glad to be back. Thank y'all for watching. Yeah, like Barry said, we might not have an exact schedule in terms of time and everything on what the videos will be. Once we get closer to the start of next season, everything will kind of fall into place. We'll have expected times of when you can watch us, but just make sure you have the notification bell clicked. Stay tuned, and hey, basketball's right around the corner.
And also, don't forget, we're giving away a $250 Fanatics gift card. All you got to do is go to the main page of this channel, click on the video, enter in the contest, and we're giving away a $250 gift card when we reach 1,000 subscribers. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out with us today. We'll see you all tomorrow, and have a wonderful evening.